Agenda, I need a motion to approve it. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Tonight we have public comment, but we have no public. So I'm going to jump right on past that then, and we'll move on then. The first item is the City Council Salary Committee. So Ed, is there any update from the previous?
Yes, sir. I've sent you the information, but I'll go over it. The Citizens Committee came back with a recommendation of increasing the council salary from $250 to $325 per month, and the mayor's salary from $425 to $595 per month. And they also recommend that the mayor and council review the compensation at least every 5 years. They met twice. I provided them with some information, the same that I provided y'all as far as the different salaries from local, from around the state. They reviewed that. They asked me for some other data. I provided that for them, and they proceeded.
Okay, do we have any discussion, any comments?
Yeah, I know some of the council probably wanted to make some adjustments to that, probably accept the proposal they have, but also make some adjustments and suggest some other things to be added into it just from the previous conversation. I think one is probably accepting the mayor's raise, but also bring the council to that $107 improvement. That would be one of my suggestions, just based off conversation with other council members, things like that. Also, I think it's something about adding probably a retirement pension into that also, especially for long term. I guess we would have to determine what is long term, but if we just put it up front, it's just some of the suggestions that I've heard from different council members and that I'd probably be willing to support also. I probably would be a good suggestion to bring us up to surrounding areas throughout the state, cities of similar size, especially with the workload that we have. If you go back and look, during the pandemic, this is probably one of the most productive years that I've had since I've been on the council, under the circumstances. So I think that increase that was suggested by the committee is a good suggestion, but also just to try to balance things out. I think that bringing the council to 170 also, 170 increase also along with it, would be a good thing to do, along with considering bringing the retirement back into the picture also.
Okay, who else?
I'd ask Ed to bring eventually to us some information about retirement. We had at one time, council members had received, that council members that had served longer than 8 years had received retirement benefits, and Sandra and I qualified under that previous plan. But I looking back on my longer than I'd like to remember, to admit, years on the council, I've really benefited from people that have been on the council long before me and had experience, and I think that it is good to have those type of people on the council, as well as new information, new ideas. So I think that would be a helpful thing in that regard.
Okay. Anybody else want to add?
I just want to personally thank the committee. I want to personally thank the committee because, of course, it's volunteer, and I think they actually did a good job.
Particularly like that every 5-year revision thing. I mean, looking at it again, every 5 years automatically, I think that's really good.
Because it had not been looked into until, 2005 was the last
A
time?
long time.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I believe Noah had just gotten off the ark.
With all of those comments in mind, I guess at the outset, I wanted to ask Ed if he met with the committee. Did you meet with him?
I did the first meeting. I met with them and just went over the information. Basically, it was just their first gathering. The second meeting, I did not. They came in, I asked them if they had any questions of me, and they asked a couple of questions. I don't remember highlight them for their deliberation over.
Okay, and I was just, so we just kind of gave them the assignment without, we didn't say much about how we wanted them to go about it. And so I was wondering what method they used, how did they go about it? Because I looked at the numbers, picking up on what Henry said. I had a question about the difference in the percentage increase for the mayor versus council. I think it has, in the last year, we've certainly seen a different level of activity, and that's been for all of us, mayor and council. And I think we're gonna see that continue. I don't think that we're gonna fall back into a situation where we don't have anything to do, we don't have to put forth the time and effort that we saw in the last 12 months or so. Secondly, the CPI, when you start thinking about how much things have changed over 15 years or however long it's been looked at, we're way askew from that. Not that that should have been our objective, but I was just looking for the rhyme and reason, you know, for the recommendation. Not to say I disagree with anything, just I like to understand how do we go about getting from point A to point B. The wage, you know, the implication that, and this is a conversation that another council member and I had just today, to think of it as a wage increase or compensation or whatever. I don't think of it as such. I think of it as a gratuity. So, you know, we know that we're not going to be paid for our time. We're going to be appreciated for our time. So I don't think the expectation for many of us is that we're going to be compensated, if you will, for what it takes to be in this role. None of us ran for the money, and none of us are going to continue to do it because of what we receive in appreciation. What else? Seems like I had a lot more thoughts than I've expressed. I know you hope I don't today. Joe.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Anyway, I've never felt like, you know, and Jerry's not here. I think that when we first started talking about this point was he didn't want to be a part of anything, you know, any discussion about what he should receive in compensation or in appreciation for the work that he does. And personally, I've never felt like I had a need to ask for a raise either. And I go right back to my previous statement of don't think of it as a raise, or don't think of it as pay for what we do. I think of it as a stipend and a gratuity and an appreciation for what we are willing to do to advance this city. And you were about to say, Ed, I'm sorry.
The committee did ask me to look at the Consumer Price Index from 2006 to 2021. I did do that, provided them with the calculations on that, so they did look at that as part of their discussion. But again, I was not in the room as they made the decision.
And when they started, I think it was something like, what, 2 point something, and in 1 month it changed to almost double that, 4.2, I think it is, as of April. So, and you can't really zero in on any 1 month, but if you think about the number of changes that there might be over the course of that period of time, I'm sure there were swings in both directions.
And the Department of Labor has an inflation calculator that you can put in that number of years and it'll give you the data behind it. So that's what I did.
And I have a question, and my question is concerning retirement. The ones that was on the council before we stopped the retirement plan, or do they qualify for any retirement, or did that just stop? How do I find out?
Only Councilmember Downs and Councilmember Thornton they were still eligible, but none of the other ones that are not receiving retirement were eligible.
Okay, so,
But the plan is the city's plan, and the city can amend that plan at any time, so you certainly have the ability to Yes,
or inaction.
I'd like to say one thing about the 5-year review. On the one hand, that can kind of tie your hands if we say we're gonna review it every 5 years without saying at least every 5 years. You know, there may be times when the council, and maybe totally different group from us, that wants to do it more frequently. And I think we have to be careful not to implicate what our future council might want to do by locking in a 5-year period for review. I mean, at least every 5 years, I think
That's a good
reasonable.
That's the language that's in the staff report, that's what they recommended, was at least every 5 years.
Could I ask something? With the rerun every 5 years, do we need to look at putting some type of language in there? Because I've heard in the past, well, you know, things like this that happen for vindictive motives, you know, for more as people want to take things out because they dislike, or whatever. We all done heard those, I think, over the years of people using this as a tool to be vindictive. And I think it needs to be some type of language now. If it really is only for increase only, and not to attract people to anything other than that, for more, if the council see budget-wise that they need to reduce, then that should be another route they will have to go, I would think. I don't know. That's just a suggestion of mine. Because I know in the past years, Joe, you and Sandra have been on, so you know y'all are our experts right now. So yes, I know there was a lot of things in the packages, the council package for more conversation, whatever we want to say it is, that's no longer there, that probably could have been beneficial one way or the other, but was taken out because of other devious reasons or whatever. Because at the end of the day, my thing is, what we're doing, we're not doing for us, we're doing for the ones that come behind us to make it more realistic compared to other cities and compared to today's time for more council conversation, however you want to say it.
To get us up to minimum wage.
Exactly. Sort of, man.
Okay, anybody else on salary? If not, we'll move on now to the mural ordinance. Any changes to the mural
No,
ordinance?
sir, no change. If everyone is satisfied with this draft, then we'll go ahead and put that in ordinance form for the next work session. We'll consider to get it moved forward for approval.
I've got a question, Ed. Several times it's mentioned, murals shall remain in place a minimum of 5 years. Is the intent just as it reads, or say I own a building and I buy a building and it had a mural and it hadn't been up 5 years and I don't want it on there? Any provision to deal with that?
No, there's nothing that's in the language here. Again, I think that is so that it does remain in place for 5 years without it being changed. That's one of the other, I think that's one of the other key things. It's not put up this year and then changed,
I thought about it might mean you don't want it revolving every 6 months, something else, but.
I think that's as much of it as saying it must stay for 5 years. I would agree with, if there were a different property owner, they might want to apply and just go through the process and see it.
So there is a process for exceptions to this? Bring it before the
municipal plan, this would go before the municipal planning board.
Mhm. So if they wanted to allow you the exception or the variance to this, they could?
Well, they could, or if they denied it, then, they can start bringing it to the council to appeal.
Anybody else on murals? Any questions?
I'm not married to that language either. It could be changed or taken out.
Is that
I would
correct?
my recommendation would be that we change the language to allow a removal, but, to keep intact the provision that keeps it from changing very, very frequently, you know, every 6 months, every year, or whatever.
Maybe a clause about allowing for some appeal for exception.
Just the content can't change on the mural, but if maybe some language that the mural could be removed in less than 5 years, but once these things are up, especially if they're painted on a wall, you're gonna either have to put another mural up you're gonna have to put another mural up, so we don't allow the entire building to be painted unless it's already painted. So that's gotta be,
Just paint the mural over.
well, you mean it's like a big white square on the wall with nothing on it?
A blank screen.
Do we really want that?
I hope we would try to avoid it.
Yeah, we don't, yeah,
But you
I-
can paint the whole wall.
no, you can't just paint a whole blank brick wall.
You can't.
No, it goes against historic preservation guidelines.
Even, are all of our buildings conform?
If they're painted, they can be painted. If they're not painted, they cannot be painted. So,
I was thinking there was not, wasn't that
yeah, there's,
exceptional?
yeah. So I don't know what percentage is painted and not painted, but I guess if we might want to get something in there. If it's if it's a painted wall, just paint over it and you're done. But if we put up a mural on a back of a brick building, it's got to remain
I agree with Joe, if there was an exception for, an exception clause for review that could be added. I mean, these are murals, they're not advertised.
because you can't pressure wash them off
It's
either.
intended to be a
That's
permanent
the
fixture.
pressure washing bill's not allowed.
But are you referring to like
So you're
Point
saying
University's
picture makes it
name
the same?
on their side of their building, and suppose they moved out
Well,
and it's something, somebody else moved in, like changing that? Is that what you're referring to?
Would that be considered a mural?
Yeah,
I
it's-
wouldn't think
That
that
was
was.
permitted under the zoning ordinance. So
Right.
But that is, again, you're making all good, valid arguments, and that's been part of the whole, issue with trying to write an ordinance or regulate these type,
And
signs.
I don't think it would be something that would happen often because the expense of removing it, probably would.
Or
it
the
would have to be
expense
really
of
something
putting it
that-
on, probably pretty expensive.
But God forbid we lost Point University, then we've got the ghost of that on the wall because you'll never get it all off.
You can just paint formally.
We'll look for some more language.
Yeah, that's got to be. Yeah, that'll have to have something put over the top of that one if that ever happened.
Since Ed said he wasn't
and
married
as-
to it,
as
we could put
tenants-
divorce on the top of it.
Yeah.
Everything.
All right, boy. You look at these pictures and you think, wow. Anybody else? Anything else on the mural? Any questions? Let's move on to the recreation playground. We got a lot of nice playground illustrations in our packet tonight.
You got two, and you'll notice these are both from the same vendor. This is a vendor that we use for the playground that's located in the Westport Housing Authority. We did that out, they were the low bidder on that. I looked at pricing, and, I think by the time we get through the RFP process, that, my recommendation is that we use the same vendor, and these are the two options. Again, if the council desires to do something else, we need to do that. I will present these to you. Number one is the Star Trek colors, 350/2175. The use area is 37 feet by 30 feet, and this goes at the 6th Avenue. The area is 902 square feet, 9-foot height. It has a 29 user capacity for the 8 through 5 through 12. This bid includes the structure, 12-inch playground border, 2 6-foot benches with back, 32-gallon trash can. That includes installation. It includes engineered wood fiber and the placement of that new fiber along with shipping. The price on that one is $32,595.60. The second one is lighter in color, 500-2174. It's 42 by 31, a little bit longer, 1,000 milliamps, 8 foot in height. The user capacity is 33. Included is the structure, equipment, playground board, 2 6-foot benches and backs, 132 gallon trash can, installation of the equipment, engineered with fiber, and the installation of the new fiber. And the total on that with shipping is $32,632.85. And you got a lot of information there, as deep as you want to dive into it.
Sound like a pretty good price for that kind of, considering how expensive these playgrounds are.
The yellow,
Look at the layout.
I'm trying to understand what's that long thing. Is that a rope, climbing rope?
Yeah, it's rock.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's like a rope.
Come a long way since a seesaw, huh, Joe?
Formally, a seesaw.
These are like the yellow one.
Yeah.
That yellow one looks kind of fun.
Will it be yellow? Will it be that color Ed, or just is yellow in this picture?
Yes, we can request that.
Let me just ask you one question. What's the difference in this one, if there is a difference, and the one that we have already at the ballpark? Is it the same or is it larger? Yeah,
That was a little bit smaller.
the one at the city park, right?
Right.
Okay.
These are very similar to the ones that's at the housing authority.
Okay.
Same benches, same pins. The design is different, but it's, basically the same cost.
When the Lord's gonna make me ill, I'll take this one.
Certainly don't, have to decide tonight.
I know.
If you have any questions about it, that's
It is nice.
All y'all with grandkids, show them to them.
Huh?
I said, let y'all get your grandkids to
To
help you pick it out, yeah.
Oh, they'll take either one of them.
Yeah.
That would be something nice to let the kids at the school pick it out.
Yeah, that'd probably be a, you'd probably open up a can of worms doing that. Any other questions or comments on the recreation playground?
We can do them both.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions, comments? All right, let's move on to board and committee appointments then.
we've got for 2021 right now, based on our schedule, we've got 3 vacant board seats. One is Strict County Parks and Recreation Commission. One is for the Board of Adjustments, and one is for Keep Tree View. We can get some recommendations prior to the next meeting, we can get somebody in those positions.
All right. Any questions, y'all, regarding that? Excuse me.
And there's only one with an incumbent, right? Two of them are filling vacant positions.
Well, all 3 of those are vacant.
Keep True Beautiful, Rec Parks and Rec, and
Board of Adjustments.
Board of Adjustments.
Excuse me, y'all. Any questions regarding that?
So when you say March, you're referring to March 2020?
No, it's just a month in which we put those on the agenda, because that's Typically, we're basing that on the other members that are on there, so if we have a vacant seat. So those members, like for the Hawk Library, we reappointed those in March. So that's just the way the schedule works out when they're coming on.
So like the Board of Adjustments, I didn't think we had a vacancy on there because we named someone, but we have 2 vacancies and we named one.
Excuse me. Okay, anything else on the board committee appointments? That's our last item on the agenda for the evening. So I will need now a motion to enter into executive session. Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, well, let's turn off the cameras and,
Could I thank everyone?
oh, yeah,
Please.
hang on, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you all so much for your support, for my crowning, I guess that's to say like that. West Point showed up and showed out, and I'm just going to ask for your continuous prayers as we go on to the next level.
Across the state. All right.
I would just like to say I haven't seen some of y'all in a whole year, so I'm just happy to see you.
We missed you too.
Yeah.
Are you out now?
Any better?
Yeah.